The red warning lights bathed the bridge of the UES Indomitable in an eerie glow as Commander Lee Kyungmin jolted awake in his captain's chair. The piercing alarm of an incoming priority transmission cut through the quiet hum of the night shift. His watch showed 03 for 7 hours, still 3 hours before the normal crew rotation. "Sir, we're receiving an emergency broadcast on all frequencies," announced Ensign Bae Min-jun from the communications station, his young face pale with concern. It's bad, Commander." Kyungmin rubbed the sleep from his eyes and straightened. In his chair, in his 15 years of service, emergency calls at this hour never brought good news. "Put it through, Ensign. All hands. This is the bridge. We have an incoming distress signal." The main screen flickered to life, showing static and interference. Then a voice broke through, desperate, terrified, barely human in its panic. "This is Colony Leader Thane of the Valerian, settlement on Proxima 7. We are under attack by the Kresh Horde. They came without warning, consuming everything. Our defenses are failing. The shield generators are down. They're breaking through the outer districts. Please, anyone who receives this, help us. We have children here. Families, they're dying and we can't stop them." The transmission dissolved into screams, the sound of weapons fire before cutting to static silence. The bridge crew exchanged grim looks. Everyone in the human defense fleet knew about the Kresh. They were the nightmare that kept veteran soldiers awake at night. A species of perfect killing machines that had swept through the outer rim like a plague of locusts. Lieutenant Park, Soyoung, the ship's tactical officer, quickly moved to her station. Her fingers flew across the holographic displays as she tried to establish a sensor lock on the Proxima 7 system. "Commander, I'm reading massive biosignatures around the SE planet. The Kresh swarm is... It's enormous. Larger than anything we've seen in the reports. How many survivors?" Kyungmin asked. Already knowing the answer would be heartbreaking, Soyoung's face grew even more serious as she analyzed the data. Sensors indicate approximately 12,000 Valerians trapped in the colony's central dome, looks like. They've managed to get their emergency shields up, but she paused, checking her readings again. "Sir, the Kresh have completely surrounded them. They're not just attacking, they're systematically cutting off every escape route. It's estimated. Time before the dome falls? Based on previous Kresh assault patterns, maybe 18 hours, 24 at most." The bridge fell silent, except for the steady beeping of various systems. 18 hours. Kyungmin felt his stomach drop. He'd seen the aftermath of Kresh attacks. Before entire worlds stripped bare, populations consumed, nothing left but empty shells of what had once been thriving civilizations. "What about the Galactic Council?" asked Chief Engineer Lim Junho, who had arrived on the bridge after hearing the alert. "Surely they'll respond to this." Soyoung shook her head. "The Council's nearest fleet is 6 days out from Proxima 7. They're dealing with a territorial dispute in the Andorian sector. Even if they left immediately, 6 days. Kyungmin's jaw tightened. Everyone knew the Kresh didn't leave survivors that long. They were methodical, efficient, and absolutely ruthless. The creatures had evolved on a world where only the strongest predators survived, and they had turned galactic conquest into an art form. The elevator doors hissed open, and Staff Sergeant Kim Tae-ho stepped onto the bridge. The Marine's uniform was crisp, despite the early hour, and his eyes held the steady calm of a man who had seen real combat. "Commander, I heard the alert. My Marines are already suiting up." "Sergeant, you know what we're facing here? The Kresh aren't like the pirates we've been chasing. These are the creatures that made the Altarian Empire abandon 3 entire star systems rather than fight them directly." Tae-ho nodded grimly. "I know, sir. But we've been tracking Kresh movement patterns for months. Studying their tactics, their weaknesses. My team is ready for immediate deployment." "Weaknesses?" Kyungmin raised an eyebrow. The intelligence. "Reports say they adapt to any threat, survive in any environment." "What weaknesses?" "They've never faced humans before, Commander. Every species they've conquered has been either pacifists or used energy-based weapons. They've adapted to plasma rifles, laser cannons, particle beams, but kinetic weapons. Old-fashioned bullets and explosives. They've never seen anything like what we bring to a fight. The tactical display showed the Kresh swarm moving across Proxima 7's surface like a living shadow. Millions of the creatures, each one a perfect killing machine, all working together with hive-mind coordination. "Sir," interrupted communications. "Officer Yu Yunhai, I'm receiving additional transmissions from the colony. They're broadcasting their final messages to families across the galaxy." The weight of those words settled over the bridge crew. 12,000 people saying goodbye to their loved ones. Preparing to die because help was too far away, Kyung-Min stood up. His decision made, signaled the fleet. "All ships, prepare for immediate combat, jump to Proxima 7. Full battle stations." Commander Soyoung said quietly, "Our orders are to patrol this sector. Command hasn't authorized." "Command isn't watching 12,000 innocent people about to be slaughtered," Kung-min replied firmly. "Sometimes you have to choose between following orders and doing what's right. Today, we choose right." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as the crew prepared for what many of them knew could be their final mission. But there was no hesitation, no second-guessing. They were humans, and humans didn't abandon their friends. The Kresh were about to learn what happened when you threatened humanity's allies. The stars twisted and warped as the human fleet tore through hyperspace, racing toward Proxima 7 at speeds that would have seemed impossible just decades earlier. Commander Kung-min stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching the navigation display count down the final seconds to their destination. "Hyperspace exit in 10 seconds, announced navigator Kim So-jin, her hands steady on the controls. Despite the tension filling the bridge, all ships reporting ready for combat deployment. The fleet consisted of 12 vessels, not the largest force humanity had ever assembled. But each ship carried the finest soldiers Earth had to offer. As they dropped back into normal space, the viewports revealed a sight that made even veteran spacers catch their breath. Proxima 7 hung before them like a diseased jewel. Its once green continents now crawling with dark masses that moved like oil across the surface. The Kresh swarms were everywhere, covering entire land masses in their relentless advance toward the colony's central dome. "Sweet Mother of Earth," whispered Tactical Officer Park So-young, studying her sensors. "There are millions of them down there, maybe tens of millions." In the dropship bay of the assault carrier, U.S. Wolverine, Captain Choi Min-ho gathered his Marines around the central holotable. The bay buzzed with activity as soldiers checked their gear one final time, unlike the sleek energy weapons favored by most galactic species. The humans carried what looked like ancient relics, rifles that fired solid projectiles, grenades packed with chemical explosives, and combat knives forged from Earth's steel. "All right, listen up, you beautiful killers," Minho called out, his voice carrying over the noise of preparation. "The Kresh think they're the apex predators of this galaxy. They've steamrolled every civilization they've encountered for the past 50 years. They adapt to any threat, survive in any environment, and hunt in coordinated packs." He paused, looking around at the faces of his Marines, men and women who had been born and raised on humanity's homeworld, forged by millions of years of evolution on a planet that tried to kill everything living on it. "But here's the thing," Minho continued with a grin. "They've never met humans before. They don't know what we're capable of. They think being fast, tough, and hunting in packs makes them special. Sound familiar to anyone?" Corporal Yoon Hyrin laughed as she slammed a magazine of armor-piercing rounds into her rifle. "Just like hunting wolves back on Earth, sir. Except these wolves bleed green instead of red." "That's the spirit, Corporal. The Valerians are trapped in their central colony dome. 12,000 civilians, including families with children. The dome's shields are holding for now, but they won't last much longer." Minho activated the tactical display, showing the colony layout. He punched through the Kresh perimeter, extract every last civilian, and show these creatures what happens when they threaten human allies. Sergeant Park Jinwoo raised his hand. "Sir, intelligence reports say the Kresh have perfect coordination. They move like a hive mind. How do we counter that?" "Simple," replied Minho. "We don't fight like a hive mind. We fight like humans. We improvise, we adapt, and we overcome. The Kresh expect their enemies to run when outnumbered. They expect panic when facing overwhelming odds. They've never faced a species that gets more dangerous when backed into a corner. The Marines began moving toward their dropships, each one a sleek vessel designed for rapid planetary assault. Private Nam Yujin, barely 19 years old and on his first deployment, looked nervous as he strapped himself into the transport harness. "Hey, kid," called out Corporal Lee Sung-ho, a veteran of the Centauri campaigns. "You scared?" "Little." Nam admitted, "We're about to fight creatures that have destroyed entire civilizations." Good Sung-ho nodded. "Fear keeps you alive. But remember, those civilizations didn't have one important thing we do."
"What's that?"
They weren't from Earth. The dropships launched from the carrier bays like bullets fired from a gun, streaking toward the planet's surface through the black of space. Lieutenant Bang Ji-woo piloted the lead transport, his hands steady on the controls as they entered Proxima 7's atmosphere. "Contact with upper atmosphere," he announced over the comm, beginning descent to landing zone Alpha. "All passengers prepare for a rough ride down." Through the small viewports, the Marines could see the true scale of what they were facing. The Kresh swarms covered the landscape like a living carpet, their chitinous bodies reflecting the light of the alien sun. Individual creatures were hard to make out from this height, but the mass movement was hypnotic and terrifying. Their pointed-out weapons specialist O Yunyung, indicating a cleared area near the colony's outer perimeter. "That's our landing zone. Looks like the Kresh are keeping it clear for some reason." "They're smart," observed Minho. "They know we're coming, and they want to see what we're made of before they commit to a full attack." The dropships descended through increasingly thick atmosphere, their heat shields glowing as they cut through the air. Below them, the Kresh swarms began to shift and move, flowing toward their landing site like water finding the lowest point. 30 seconds to touchdown, Bang announced, his voice calm, despite the growing intensity of the situation. "Kresh biosignatures are thick down there. Looks like they're very curious about our arrival." Through the tactical cameras mounted on the dropship's hull, they could watch thousands of Kresh creatures converging on their landing zone. The aliens moved with an eerie, fluid coordination, each one perfectly in sync with the others. It's like cells in a massive organism. The creatures themselves were nightmare fuel, 8-limbed predators the size of earth tigers, with armored carapaces that seemed to absorb light and razor-sharp claws that could slice through steel. Their heads were elongated and eyeless, but covered in sensory organs that could detect movement, heat, and even fear pheromones from incredible distances. 10 seconds, Bang called out. "Everyone hold on. This is going to be interesting." Minho chambered around in his rifle and looked around at his Marines. Each face showed the same expression, not fear, but anticipation. They were about to face the galaxy's most feared predators, creatures that had terrorized entire sectors of space, and they couldn't wait to get started. "Good," Minho said, watching the Kresh mass below them. "Let them come. Let them see what they're dealing with. It's time to introduce them to Earth's children." The dropships hit the ground with a tremendous crash, their landing thrusters scorching the alien soil. Before the dust had even settled, the rear ramps were dropping and the first human boots were touching down on Proxima 7. The Kresh charged immediately, their alien shrieks filling the air as thousands of them rushed toward the landing zone. But instead of the panic and retreat they expected, they found something they had never encountered. Before, in their centuries of conquest, they found humans ready for a fight. The ground trembled as the first wave of Kresh slammed into the human defensive line like a tsunami of claws and teeth. The alien creatures moved faster than anything the Marines had ever seen, their 8 legs carrying them across the rocky terrain in bounds that covered 20 meters at a time. Sergeant Park Jinwoo dove behind a chunk of twisted metal that had once been part of the colony's outer wall. His squad spread out along the eastern perimeter, their rifles already chattering as streams of tungsten rounds cut through the air. The sound was different from the high-pitched whine of energy weapons, deeper, more primal, like thunder rolling across the battlefield. "Contact east. Attacked east." Ginwoo shouted into his comm, squeezing off 3-round bursts at the nearest Kresh. The creature was the size of a small car, its black carapace gleaming wetly in the alien sunlight. His first shot sparked off its armor, but the third punched through, sending a spray of green blood across the ground. Private Seo Dayun was positioned 15 meters to his left, her rifle on full automatic as she poured fire into the charging swarm. "They're so fast," she yelled, her voice barely audible over the weapon's fire. "How are they moving like that?" The Kresh were unlike anything in the military databases. Each creature looked like a nightmare fusion of spider and shark, with elongated heads filled with rows of serrated teeth and sensory organs that twitched and writhed as they tracked their prey. Their armored shells had evolved to deflect energy weapons, scattering laser beams and absorbing plasma bolts with ease, but they had never encountered kinetic weapons before. Jinwu's next burst caught a Kresh center mass, the tungsten rounds, punching through its carapace like it was made of cardboard. Green ichor sprayed across the alien soil as the creature tumbled, its momentum carrying it forward until it crashed into the rocky outcrop where the sergeant was taking cover. "That's it," Jinwu yelled, reloading with practice speed. "Keep firing. They're not adapted for solid projectiles." The Kresh had conquered dozens of civilizations using the same basic strategy: overwhelming numbers combined with perfect coordination. They would charge en masse, absorbing the enemy's energy weapons with their evolved armor, and tear their opponents apart with claws that could slice through battle steel. But the humans weren't following the script. Instead of breaking and running, when faced with impossible odds, the Marines formed interlocking fields of fire. They used the colony's industrial equipment as cover, turning cargo containers and mining equipment into impromptu fortifications. When one position came under pressure, neighboring squads would redirect their fire to provide support. Corporal Yun Heren had claimed a position on top of a disabled hover truck, giving her a clear view of the battlefield. Her sniper rifle cracked repeatedly, each shot dropping a Kresh that was trying to flank the main defensive line. "I count at least 3,000 in this first wave," she reported over the comm, "and there are more coming." Lieutenant Oyunung was leading her team through the colony's industrial sector, using the maze of machinery and storage tanks to approach the Kresh from an unexpected angle. The creatures had perfect coordination when attacking from the front, but they seemed confused by the humans' willingness to split up and attack from multiple directions. "The Valerians said these things adapt to any threat," she whispered into her comm as her team crept through the shadows between two massive processors. "But they've never faced persistence hunters before." She was right. The Kresh were used to prey that either fled immediately or made a desperate stand in one location. They'd never encountered a species that would spread out, use terrain too. Their advantage, and actually hunt the hunters while being hunted themselves. The battle raged for hours. As Kresh bodies piled up around the human positions, other creatures would dart forward to drag their fallen comrades away. Intelligence reports had mentioned this behavior the Kresh could consume their own dead to rapidly evolve new adaptations to whatever had killed them, but human tactics evolved too. When the creatures began avoiding open ground after losing many to sniper fire, the Marines started using grenades to flush them out of cover. When groups of Kresh tried to overwhelm single positions through coordinated charges, overlapping squads would provide mutual support, creating crossfires that turned the aliens' own coordination against them. Private Nam Yujin, the young soldier, who had been nervous during the descent, found himself holding a crucial choke point between two storage buildings. 3 Kresh had tried to push through in the last 10 minutes, and all 3 lay dead at his feet, their green blood mixing with the alien dust. "I can't believe we're actually winning," he said over the comm, reloading his rifle with shaking hands. "Don't get cocky, kid," replied Corporal Lee Seung-ho from his position 50 meters away. "These things are smart. They're learning from every engagement." As if to prove his point, the next wave of Kresh attacks came from completely different angles. The creatures had observed the humans' defensive positions and were now trying to exploit gaps in their coverage. But the Marines adapted just as quickly, repositioning to meet each new threat. Captain Minho moved between positions, coordinating the defense and calling in air support when needed. The dropships had remained in orbit, but their pilots were standing by to provide close air support if things got desperate. All squads. This is actual Minho's voice crackled over the cum. The colony dome is still holding, but we need to thin out these numbers before we can make our extraction run. Keep up the pressure. As the alien sun began to set, casting long shadows across the battlefield, something unprecedented began to happen. The constant stream of Kresh attacks started to slow. Creatures that had been charging fearlessly into human weapons fire began to hesitate, taking cover behind rocky outcrops and studying their opponents more carefully. Staff Sergeant Kim Tae-ho was positioned at the forward observation post, using high-powered binoculars to monitor Kresh movements. What he saw made him double-check his instruments. "Commander," he reported over the radio to the orbiting command ship, "the main swarm is pulling back." They're actually regrouping. Commander Kyungmin's voice came back immediately, filled with disbelief. "Say again, Sergeant? Did you say they're withdrawing?" "Affirmative, sir." "The Kresh are pulling back to defensive positions about 500 meters from our perimeter. It looks like they're studying us." There was a long pause before Kyungmin responded. "Copy that, Sergeant. First time in recorded galactic history that the Kresh have withdrawn from active combat against an inferior force. All units prepare for Phase 2 of the operation." As darkness fell over Proxima 7, the Marines consolidated their positions and tended to their wounded. They had done something that entire civilizations had failed to accomplish. They had made the galaxies perfect. Predators stop and think twice. The Kresh were learning that there was a new apex predator in the galaxy, and it had come from a small blue world on the edge of known space. The twin suns of Proxima 7 rose slowly over, a battlefield that looked nothing like it had the day before. Where once there had been open ground and scattered debris, now a maze of defensive positions, stretched across the colony's perimeter like a spider's web made of steel and death. Lieutenant Woo Young-sik wiped sweat from his forehead as he put the finishing touches on his latest creation, a motion-activated mine disguised as a piece of colony wreckage. His combat engineers had worked through the night, turning every piece of available material into a weapon. "That's the last one," he reported to Captain Minho over the com. "We've got proximity mines, tripwires, and shaped charges covering every approach to the colony dome. Plus, I've rigged some of the old mining equipment to explode on command." Humans had learned something important during the first battle. The Kresh were incredibly smart, but they thought like a hive mind. They expected their enemies to be predictable, to follow patterns. What they didn't expect was a species that could completely change the rules overnight. Corporal Kim Hyojin had claimed the highest position she could find, the top of a communications tower that gave her a perfect view of the surrounding area. Through her rifle scope, she watched the Kresh gathering in the distance. But something was different about their movements. "They're coming back," she announced over the com, adjusting her scope's magnification. "But they're not charging like yesterday. They're being careful, sending scouts ahead, testing our positions." From his command position in the colony's central plaza, Captain Minho smiled. It was a cold smile, the kind worn by predators who had just realized their prey was afraid of them. "Good," he replied. "They're learning to fear us. It means we're doing something right." Second battle began. Not with a massive charge, but with careful probing attacks. Small groups of Kresh would dart forward, test the human defenses, then retreat to report what they'd learned. With smart tactics, the kind used by veteran soldiers rather than mindless killers. But the humans had been preparing for exactly this kind of fight. The first Kresh scout to trip one of Wu's mines disappeared in a ball of fire and shrapnel, its death scream echoing across the battlefield. The explosion sent a clear message to the other creatures. Nowhere was safe anymore. Kresh adapted quickly, using their natural camouflage to blend with the rocky terrain. Their skin could shift colors like a chameleon, making them nearly invisible against the alien landscape. It was a trick that had worked against every species they'd ever fought, but humans had been hunting camouflaged predators since before they'd learned to make fire. Sergeant Lee Song-ho led his squad through the colony's underground maintenance tunnels, moving like ghosts beneath the battlefield. The tunnel system was a maze of pipes and conduits that the Kresh hadn't even known existed. It was the perfect way to get behind enemy lines without being detected. "Movement up ahead," whispered Private Bae Minjun, his thermal imaging goggles. Picking up heat signatures through the tunnel wall. 3, Kresh, maybe 4? They're setting up an ambush position near the water treatment plant. Sung Ho smiled in the darkness. An ambush was exactly what he'd been hoping for. "Remember, we go in fast and quiet. No shooting unless absolutely necessary. These things communicate through some kind of biological radio. We don't want to alert the main swarm." They emerged from a maintenance hatch 50 meters behind the Kresh position. The aliens were focused on the human defensive lines ahead of them, completely unaware that death was approaching from behind. Sung Ho's combat knife slid between the first creature's carapace plates like it was cutting through butter. Earth steel, folded and tempered using techniques perfected over thousands of years, was more than a match for evolved alien armor. "Tango down," he reported quietly, pulling his blade free. "These creatures aren't used to being hunted. They don't even know how to watch their backs." Above ground, the main battle raged on. But this time, the humans weren't just defending, they were controlling the fight. Every Kresh attack ran into carefully prepared kill zones. Every advance was met with overlapping fields of fire that turned the aliens' own coordination against them. Private Nam Yujin, the young Marine who had been so nervous during the landing, now moved with the confidence of a veteran. He'd claimed a position behind an overturned hovercar, using its armored hull as cover, while he picked off Kresh with carefully aimed shots. "Contact left," he called out, spotting a group of creatures trying to flank his position. But instead of panic, his voice carried calm professionalism. The scared kid from yesterday was gone, placed by a soldier who had looked death in the face and refused to blink. The Kresh threw wave after wave at the human positions. But each assault was weaker than the last. The creatures that had terrorized entire sectors of the galaxy were learning what it meant to face an apex predator from a death world by midday. Something unprecedented began happening. The Kresh attacks weren't just failing, they were becoming desperate. Creatures that had once moved with perfect coordination were now making mistakes, taking unnecessary risks, fighting with the desperation of animals backed into a corner, sir. Private Nam called out from his communications station. "I'm picking up Kresh transmissions on multiple frequencies. They're calling for help." Captain Minho stopped what he was doing. In 50 years of galactic warfare, no one had ever recorded the Kresh calling for reinforcements. They were the reinforcements that other species called when facing extinction. "Are you certain, Private?" "Yes, sir. It's long-range communications, all broadcasting the same message. They're requesting immediate assistance from other Kresh fleets in neighboring systems." The implications hit everyone at once. The galaxy's most feared predators were running scared, calling for backup against a single human battalion. It was like watching wolves call for help when faced with a house. Cat Got Commander Kyung Min's voice crackled over the come from orbit. "Outstanding work, ground team. Patch me through to Galactic Command immediately. Council needs to know that. The Kresh are asking for help. First time in recorded history." By the third day, the tide had completely turned. Instead of defending fixed positions, human squads were actively hunting Kresh through the colony's outer sectors. The creatures that had once been unstoppable were now the ones hiding in shadows. Fleeing from the sound of human boots on alien soil, Corporal Yoon Heron led her fire team through the abandoned mining district, tracking a group of Kresh that had been harassing supply runs to the colony dome. The aliens were good at hiding, but they left traces that human eyes could read: disturbed dust, claw marks on metal surfaces, the faint smell of their alien pheromones. "There," she whispered, pointing to a cluster of storage containers. "Thermal. Imaging shows at least 6 heat signatures. They're waiting for us to walk into another ambush." Her teammate, Specialist Oh Yun-young, grinned as she prepared a flashbang grenade. "Too bad for them we don't walk into ambushes, we make them." The explosion of light and sound sent the hidden Kresh into panic. They burst from cover, their coordination shattered only to run straight into carefully positioned human weapons. It was over in seconds. The galaxy was about to learn a new lesson about Earth's children. They weren't just survivors from a death world. They were the apex predators that even nightmares feared to face. And they were just getting started. The morning of the fourth day brought an eerie silence to the battlefield of Proxima 7. 4. The first time since the invasion began, no Kresh war cries echoed across the colony's perimeter. Instead, there was something else. The deep rumble of alien transport ships firing their engines. Captain Choi Min-ho lowered his binoculars and watched in amazement as massive Kresh carrier vessels descended from orbit. But they weren't bringing reinforcements? They were here for evacuation. I don't believe it, whispered Corporal Kim Hyojin from her sniper's perch. They're actually running away. The Kresh loading procedures were unlike anything the humans had ever seen. Thousands of the creatures streamed toward the landing zones in perfect formation. But there was something different about their movement. Where once they had moved with predatory confidence, now they seemed almost afraid. Through his scope, Trivet Nam Yujin watched as Kresh warriors helped carry their wounded toward the transports. Sir, are we going to let them leave? We could hit those ships while they're loading? Minho shook his head. Negative. We're soldiers, not executioners. They're retreating, that's all we wanted. He paused, watching another transport lift off. Besides, I want them to go back and tell their friends what happened here. The final Kresh transport ships lifted off from Proxima 7's surface in the afternoon. Their holds packed with the survivors of what had been intended as a complete planetary conquest. As the ships disappeared into hyperspace, they carried with them something the Kresh had never experienced before, the memory of defeat. Inside the colony's central dome, Captain Minho found himself surrounded by Valerian survivors. The dome's interior was a maze of emergency shelters and medical stations, filled with families who had spent 4 days certain they were going to die. Colony leader Thane approached slowly, his tall frame moving with obvious exhaustion. The Valerians. Silver skin was pale from stress, and his large eyes were filled with tears that caught the dome's artificial lighting. Commander Lee, Thane said, his voice trembling as he addressed the communication link to the orbiting fleet. How can we ever repay this debt? Your people saved us all. 12,000 lives that would have been lost without your intervention. Commander Kyungmin's voice came through the speakers, warm and steady. No payment necessary, colony leader. That's what allies do. We look out for each other. But the cost to your forces was acceptable, Kyungmin interrupted gently. Lieutenant Park, give the colony leader our final casualty report. Lieutenant Park Soyoung's voice was crisp and professional as she read from her tablet. Human. Casualties. 47 wounded, ranging from minor injuries to serious but stable condition. 3 killed in action, Corporal Kim Dong-haeon, Private Lee Minesio, and Specialist Choi Jae-won. All died protecting civilian evacuation routes. Numbers hit the dome like a thunderclap. In 4 days of fighting against the galaxy's most feared predators, humanity had lost only 3 soldiers while killing tens of thousands of Kresh and forcing the complete withdrawal of their invasion force. Kresh casualties are estimated in the tens of thousands, Soyoung continued. Complete system withdrawal confirmed. All Kresh forces have departed Proxima 7 and surrounding space. An old Valerian engineer named Kale stepped forward, his voice shaking with emotion. 3 soldiers? Only 3. To save 12,000 of us. He looked around at his fellow survivors. How is this possible? Sergeant Lee Seung-ho, his combat. Fatigue still stained with alien blood, gave a tired smile. We're from Earth, sir. We're used to bad odds. The news of humanity's victory spread through the galactic network faster than the fastest hyperspace courier. Within hours, every major news outlet in known space was running the same incredible story. The Kresh had been defeated. Not just stopped, or contained, but actually beaten so badly they had fled an entire star system. On the core world of Galactic Prime, emergency sessions were called in the towering crystal spires of the council chambers. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in heated discussion, their voices echoing through the great halls. Counselor Vex, a proud member of the Altarian species that had abandoned 3 star systems rather than face the Kresh, found himself studying tactical reports with new eyes. The humans had used weapons that were considered primitive by galactic standards, yet they had achieved something no advanced civilization had managed in over 50 years. This changes everything, announced High Counselor Zara, her crystalline form shimmering as she addressed the assembly. If the humans can defeat the Kresh, what else are they capable of? Admiral Han Jae-sung, the highest-ranking human in galactic service, received the priority transmission. While reviewing defense protocols in his office aboard the orbital station above Earth, the communication came directly from the council chambers, marked with the highest security clearance. Admiral came, Counselor. Vex's voice carefully controlled, but unable to hide a note of desperation. We have a proposition for your government. The Council would like to establish a new rapid response protocol. When conventional forces prove insufficient against existential threats, Han leaned back in his chair, a knowing smile spreading across his weathered face. You want to call Earth? She would be willing. The terms would of course be highly favorable to humanity. Full military autonomy, first choice of colonial rights in liberated systems, and a permanent seat on the Security Council. I'll need to discuss this with Earth Command, but I suspect they'll be interested. 3 months later, the galaxy learned just how interested Earth had been. The industrial world of Kepler 438b had been under siege by a species of mechanical raiders. It's known as the Iron Horde, when the distress call went out. Local defense forces were preparing for a last-ditch defense when word spread through the raider fleet. Humans are coming. The Iron Horde had heard about Proxima 7. They knew what had happened to the Invincible. The raiders took one look at the approaching human fleet and decided that, whatever they could steal from Kepler 438b wasn't worth facing the Deathworlders. The attack force withdrew before the first Earth ship even arrived in system. Back on Earth, recruitment offices for the newly formed Galactic Response Force saw lines stretching around city blocks. Young men and women who had grown up hearing stories of humanity's first galactic victory now wanted their chance to serve. They wanted to be part of something bigger than themselves, to carry on the tradition started on Proxima 7. Earth Protects became more than just a military motto. It became a promise that echoed across the galaxy. Commander Lee Kyung-min, newly promoted to admiral after his actions at Proxima 7, stood on the bridge of the UES Protector, the flagship of humanity's expanding fleet. The ship was a marvel of human engineering, sleek and deadly, built specifically for rapid response missions across the galaxy. Admiral announced his new executive officer, Commander Yoon Heron, the same Marine who had fought in the trenches of Proxima 7, now wearing the uniform of a starship officer, were receiving multiple distress calls. The hegemony worlds are under attack by something called the Shadow Fleet. The Centauri colonies are dealing with a plague outbreak that might be biological warfare. And there are reports of pirates massing in the Outer Rim. Kyung-min looked out at the stars, each point of light representing billions of lives that might need protection. It was a big galaxy, full of dangers that conventional forces couldn't handle. But that's what humans were for now. They were the ones you called when conventional forces weren't enough. Where to this time, Admiral? Heron asked, waiting for orders. Kyung-min smiled, remembering the words that had become humanity's unofficial creed since Proxima 7. Wherever they need us, Commander, wherever they need us. In the vast darkness of space, predators still lurked. Pirates, slavers, ancient evils, awakening from eons of sleep and nightmares that defied description. But now they all knew one simple truth. Somewhere in that darkness, the humans were watching. The Deathworlders from the small blue planet were out there, ready to cross any distance and face any threat to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The galaxy had its guardians, and they were just getting started. The end.